Hello Internet, Mike Byrne here from MMOBomb.com, bringing you another first look video. This time it is for Elyon Ascent Infinite Realm, launching today, October 20th, on PC, being free to play. Now yes, there's a bit of a history with this game, and I do have some concerns. Obviously, this being a first look, I'm not going to go too into depth in those, but I will link in the little card above a video where I talked about some of my concerns with Elyon. Today, we're going to take about 15-20 minutes, go through the game, give you my first impressions, talk about some of the systems, and you can make the decision on whether or not you want to play Elyon online. As always, if you love this type of content from us, click that subscribe button, click like, feed the algorithm with your comments, and spread the word. Tell your friends. Come on by the website, www.MMOBomb.com, and hang out with us and put your own reviews there in the newly revamped site. There's a lot to look at there as far as rating games for your fellow gamers. So let's just jump right into this free-to-play MMORPG. Now, this game did start out as Ascent Infinite Realm and had an Eastern release and some pulled back changes and make it more action combat instead of tab targeting. There was a whole long saga, but here we are eventually. Elyon in the East gets released last year. Now we're here, Elyon in the West, having been delayed a month to get itself away from New World's launch, which was probably one of the smarter decisions the Elyon team has made. The game is developed by Bluehole Studios, the company behind Terra, and published by Kakao Games, the former publisher of Black Desert Online. And oh boy, are the influences of both of those companies all over Elyon, for better or for worse. Starting right off the bat with character creation, if you've ever created a character in Pearl Abyss's Black Desert Online, you kind of have an idea of what's going on here, and other games have done this since then too, but that's probably the most prominently played that I can give as an example. You do have presets that you can choose from when you're customizing your character, but you can just click and drag on various parts of your character's body to make them longer, wider, smaller, shorter, whatever you want to do, including the ever-present chest slider. Why not? 6 total classes to choose from. You get a basic gist of what each class does. There's no specific, this is a tank, this is a DPS, this is a healer, because some of them can cross. For instance, I'm going to be playing the Mystic in the first look. The Mystic can be DPS, the Mystic can be healer, it can do a mix of both. It's whatever you want to cater to your playstyle. And you do have tons of ways in this game to cater to your own playstyle. We'll get to that in a little bit, but that might actually be one of my favorite parts so far about Elyon. There is no gender locking here. You can be male or female, any one of the 3 races, humans, orcs, or elves. Now that 4th race, the Ein, they're little cat people, there is no gender on them. So you don't pick male or female if that's the race that you go for. The other 3 races, no gender locking. You're all safe and ready to go. Roll whatever the hell you want. You do have to pick a faction the first time you log in. There are 2 factions, the Antari and the Vulpin, and this choice is forever unless you delete your characters and go ahead and start all over. Since there's only 1 server here in the West, at least so far, I've been playing in early access, we'll see if they launch more post-launch today on the 20th of October, but at the moment, only 1 server. So you have to choose a faction before you create your character, and then that's it. That's going to be the basis for PvP, both in your little arena stuff, 3v3 types content, or on the actual map itself in your dimensional portal areas. Again, stuff we'll get to later, but it's important that you know what faction all of your friends are going to be so that you can all roll the same faction and presumably go join a clan, Elyon's version of guilds, together. One last thing I do want to make a note of on the character creation that I think is rather interesting. A lot of games obviously let you save a build that you have made if you like a particular character, the way you've constructed it. This game lets you do that too. However, there is a secondary feature there called the gallery, where if you really like a build, you can upload it to the gallery along with all the other players that have uploaded builds to the gallery. And instead of creating your own character, you can literally open that gallery and shank somebody's character if you want to, and start with that as your basic build and, you know, maybe change hair color and stuff from there. Obviously, if you pick a male orc, then you're going to have to stick to male orc gallery profiles that you pull from there. But it's a really nice way, I think, to show off builds, or just build some monstrosities and throw them up there on the gallery for people to mess with, since it is a pretty robust character creator. As far as the gameplay itself, there's a lot to like here, in my opinion, but then there's also a lot that really just, you know, it's MMORPG time, guys. Let's do it. Yeah, WASD movement, since it is an action-based combat, your mouse is going to take care of your camera. You'll have a attack bound to left mouse button and right mouse button. Again, we kind of feel the influence of Bluehole Studios and action combat through Terra here. However, it is not as smooth as Terra is usually known for, and I think that's a residual effect of Ascent Infinite Realm kind of being revamped from a tab target into Elyon and its more action-oriented combat. So there's still kind of the stale clunky of a tab target hiding in the mainframe, so to speak, that kind of makes this not as smooth. It's not bad. It does what it's supposed to do. It's no problem. But don't expect it to feel as smooth as something like a Terra or a Vindictus or something along those lines. You only have one hotbar to use your abilities here. WASD is your movement keys. The Alt key is going to go ahead and bring up a mouse, and you're going to need that a lot because there are menus all over this damn game. But here's the interesting thing. You know how when you sit back and you play MMORPGs, or you're telling your friends about a new MMO that you're playing, and you want to say, hey man, you just got to get to endgame. You just got to get, Jason Winter hates that. You just got to get to endgame, YouTube viewer. Once you get to endgame, it's a totally different experience. Well, Elyon just basically says, you know what? Fuck all that. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make about the first 40 levels a tutorial. And you're going to get through those first 40 or so levels in a few hours. So I've played for maybe 3 or 4 hours one day of early access, and maybe 3 or 4 more hours. So maybe a total, let's say 8 hours. And I'm almost level 40 right off the bat. You'll come out of the first tutorial being level 20 and learning your abilities along the way. Now that's both good and bad, right? It kind of takes away the excitement of leveling up if it's all just kind of a tutorial, but I also kind of dig this approach. I do kind of like this approach, and it's not unique to Elyon, but they do it really well, where there's so many menus, so many currencies, all those types of things in this game, but they don't throw it all at you in 15 levels and then tell you, Godspeed, good luck, I hope you figure this damn stuff out. It's spread out over the first, let's say, 10 hours of your gameplay experience in Elyon. You're going to learn how to use your abilities. You're going to learn about character advancement, and that's one aspect of this game that I do like, and kind of tie that in with character customization as well. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But you're going to learn about all of those things as you go. Enhancing equipment, polishing runestones and upgrading those, the luminous system, the pet system, housing. There is housing. You go there to do basically all of your crafting and stuff like that. There's a trade market as far as getting crafting materials. There are tons and tons of systems, and I am level 36, 37, still being introduced to them. It feels fresh. It feels exciting. It's fast, but at the same time, you are kind of just doing basic, standard MMORPG storylines. Really boring, not really well done, not incredibly well voice acted when it is voice acted, because not a lot is. Your main characters usually are, but they only speak the first line of their dialogue in a text frame. The rest of the lines of dialogue you have to read. And with a few exceptions, the voice acting isn't all that grand. It's kind of like, yeah, you saved money, but it looks weird. Why'd you even do voice acting at all? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you just felt like you had to. I don't know. It's bizarre. It's not great. The storyline's your typical, the guys in the north are bad, we're the guys in the south, and we're good. And on the map, you kind of just get that easy of a layout. Everybody on the Ontario side is in the north of the map, all the zones in the north. Everybody from the Vulpin side is in the regions in the south of the map. and there's some areas across the middle of the map that are contested, the dimensional portal areas. But it is an open world, too. It's not zoned off. You can just walk from one zone to the next. There's no loading screens or anything like that. So you do get this sense of one big jointed world, even if it's pretty much like, hey, people A go north, people B go south. Never the two shall meet except the middle of the map where we fight over everything in these couple of zones. And that's one of the PvP options we'll get to in a little bit. So yeah, there's a lot of like generic in here, but then there's a lot of, hey, that's pretty cool. You know what? Other MMOs should do this. This little feature that Elyon has. So let's talk about the PvE side of things being my favorite side of things, whether that be dungeons, raids, or whatever you have here. I've already mentioned questing. It's pretty bland and generic for the most part. They do break this up, though, because there is a lot of doing daily quests in areas, a certain number per day for your resets. So there's a lot of repetition there. But there are these things called expedition quests out in the world that you'll just stumble upon. There might be some dude sitting there with a couple of cats, right? Like, you have no idea where I'm going with this if you haven't played it. You're like, what the hell's he talking about? Mike, you've lost your mind. Cats. No. Seriously, stick with me. The guy will have, like, 5 or 6 cats. They'll be sitting on the ground in a particular pattern, and he likes all the cats to be white, but some of them are white and some of them are black, and it's one of those old puzzles where you touch one item, in this case one cat, and it changes colors, and any cat adjacent to it changes colors, and you have to touch the cats in the right order to turn them all white or to turn them all black. You can glide in this game like Ion, so there are gliding challenges, there are jumping puzzles, there are interesting little race quests where, like, there was a tortoise, a hare, a chicken, and something else, and they all ran at different speeds, and you had to trigger them at the right time because the quest giver wanted them all to finish at the exact same time. So there's all these different side things that do interrupt this kind of bland main story and this constantly, doing regional daily quests over and over and over again for farming up various things that you may need. So there is a bit of spice in there, and even though I've seen some of the expedition quests repeat the concept of a previous expedition quest, they weren't direct copies. So, like, I've seen the cat quest that I just gave twice. Once was a pattern A with, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 cats, and then the next one that I found was pattern B with 6 cats. So there's even some variance within there as you find these in different places in the world. You can take a break from questing entirely and go do treasure maps if you want to just search around for treasure in different areas as you gather fragments of maps. There's also world quests that you'll see advertised on the right-hand side of your screen that take limited amounts of people to sign up for them. These could range from a big world boss fight to a fishing contest where, hey, there's 60 people that signed up for this. You get this own special instance. Go fishing. Whoever catches the biggest fish before time runs out wins. So there is a lot of distraction that does reward you with items. So there's incentive to do it. You're going to need some of these materials, lots of them, particularly when we talk about runestone progression. On the dungeon side of things, there are dungeons. As you're leveling to 40, you'll unlock the single-player variants of a bunch of dungeons, and you'll go do those solo. Sometimes they're part of the story quest. Sometimes they'll be part of a side quest. You could just queue up for them, too. However, there are limited numbers of times that you can get the daily bonus or reward bonus from them, 4 times per day, and recycles every day. And the dungeons come in different varieties. You've got the normal kind of story mode ones. Then you have Transcendence dungeons, which require a special item to enter, but are more longer, more difficult challenges, maybe 50 waves of different monster combinations in this one little arena with some boss fights in those waves. And then, of course, you have the party dungeons that open up once you hit level 40 that you'll take a party into to go do. So there's a bunch of different versions of this. A final version, one that's later in the game, is like a time attack version of these dungeons. So there's a ton of stuff to do. Oh, and by the way, there is a DPS meter already built into the damn game. So you're good to go. It'll show you your DPS on boss fights and your percentage of DPS from for the whole party, what your percentage was. So for you min-maxers. There's a lot to min-max in this game, and it's already got the DPS meters in there for you. How do you progress your character, though, to get through this story, to open up the new zones, to open up these dungeons? Well, there's quite a few. Some of them you're going to be used to, right? You've got a sword. You can enhance it. You can upgrade it. Make it +1, +2, +3, +4, and that'll up its stats, maybe give it an extra socket on it so you can put an extra runestone on it and do different modifiers. Of course, you can fail these and kind of lose your materials. There are differences between the Eastern and Western versions of this game, by the way, as far as where you can lose materials, when you fail, what you will lose. They've taken out a lot of the RNG of certain systems, whether that be the upgrading system or the luminous system, which is kind of like a buff set we'll talk about in a minute here. So the RNG elements that are in the Eastern version aren't here in the Western version, which is really, really good. So you've got the weapon enhancement. You can also add enchants to your gear. Again, all things we're very familiar with. Now, here's where you get into customization, though. So first off, you picked a class, and you've learned all these abilities as you've leveled up to level 40. From there, once you get to level 50, the experience really starts to slow down because it kind of feels like BDO again in that there's no true level cap. There's like a soft cap, but in theory, you could just keep going. It's just, you know, is it worth the grind to do it at that point? You've kind of got the same thing going on here in Elyon. There is a diminishing returns for experience. But you've got all these abilities. You can only equip, let's say, 10 of them, 10, 12, something like that across your hotbar. So you're not using all of your abilities. You're already choosing what abilities you want to use to cater to your playstyle. Those abilities can be further augmented, though, by using skill attributes. So let's say you have an ability that shoots an arrow forward at a monster. Great, fantastic. It might have 4 different skill attributes, though, that can modify that attack. Maybe your arrow hits the monster and breaks into smaller arrows to hit up to 2 targets around it. Maybe a different attribute will have it be a flaming arrow and it will deal extra damage. Maybe a third attribute will make it a healing arrow. Shoot it at your teammate and they will get healed. You can choose one of 4 attributes for each of the abilities you're going to use. So you can customize it again towards your playstyle. But how do you do this? It actually relates to your gear in kind of an interesting way. So you've got the sockets on your gear that you could put gems in. In Elyon, they're called Runestones. You got to take these Runestones, which you'll find from quest rewards and find them from farming materials on the planet and all that stuff, regular stuff. You refine those, polish them to make them better. Take them from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 to tier 4, on and on. Now, some of these runestones might have stat-impacting stats on them, but a lot of them are just simply the number of skill attributes this gem will give you. At rank 1, it'll give you 1. At rank 2, it'll give you 2. So you have to farm up runestones, farm up materials to polish and upgrade these runestones. Upgrading will cost you runestones of similar levels in sacrifice too, so you do quite a bit of farming here. Rank these runestones up, put them on your equipment. The number of skill attribute points that all of your runestones give you from your equipped gear is the number of skill attribute points that you can use to pick the modifiers for the skills you have. Maybe modifier A costs 4 skill attribute points, and modifier B for our arrow costs 8. I can only pick one. Do I want to spend 4 or 8 on this ability? Some of the later modifiers for your different abilities are actually unlocked through gameplay and can vary in their rarity. For instance, you might get the 3rd modifier for your favorite ability just from clearing the quests in a particular zone. But they gave you the rare version of it, and there is an epic version available if you go kick the crap out of some world boss somewhere, and it'll do a little extra damage. So there's all this incentive to have the best gear, upgrade your runestones, because it actually influences what abilities you might be using in this selected set. If you're unsure which way to go, one of the brilliant features, and I know other games have done this, but Elyon does it in a really smart way, there are pre-built templates already in the game, right in your skill attribute window. And they start at very low levels and go all the way through higher end levels with very specific functions. So you can take a healer build and it will tell you, you have to reach level 30 and we need 88 skill attribute points. But if you get that, we can just go ahead and throw this build on you and you can modify it from there. We'll also give you a little set of directions. So it gives you a basic idea of what your rotation might be. Really, really clever way to get players into what type of build they might want to use. You do have up to 8 sockets or 8 slots for you to actually save and load your own builds as you want. And all of this is done at will. There is no cost to do it besides the initial in-game gold purchasing of every save slot above the first 2. So a lot of unique stuff going on there. Further customization options, and we're not going to go into all of them here. Check out our streams on twitch.tv/MMOBomb. I'll be streaming it this Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern after the Always Online podcast at 1 Eastern. Further customization options are the actual runes themselves. If you have certain numbers of certain color runes on, you might be able to unlock a modifier that applies across your entire character. The Luminous system and the Pet system are other stat modifying items that you can upgrade over time, feed each other, sacrifice a same Luminous to upgrade a different Luminous. So you have all of these different customization, stat modifying options to go through, whether that be gear, runestones, luminous, pets, or everything else. Your own personal housing and your crafting can influence this as well. There's a lot here, an absolute lot here. I don't know if the game is compelling long-term enough to want to stick with what will inevitably be a grind for runestones. It doesn't seem too hard right at the beginning to keep up with what's going on and get some runestones upgraded, but you are eventually going to have to farm excessive amounts of materials. And while the cash shop itself doesn't have anything egregious right in it, maybe some people have had a problem with some of the numbers on the optional monthly subscription boosts that are in there. And the cosmetic costumes can be ridiculously expensive, $18 to $20, kind of, Kakao Games, what they did in BDO, so they kind of did that here too. Tremendous costumes, but a little more expensive than I would probably purchase myself. So yeah, there's a lot to like, but I don't know if you're going to want to do the grind unless you are just all about Elyon all the time, because so much of it depends on doing these daily quests, doing these dungeons, doing the same things over and over and over again to farm up these materials. And if the end game isn't compelling enough to want to stick around, yeah, you're going to lose a lot of people. On the PvP side of things, there are the normal queuing for 3v3, different PvP, stuff like that. So yeah, you have that there. And I don't want to harp too much on that because I think my time and your time would be better spent on the conquest or the conflict zones. I mentioned the zones across the middle of the map having being contested. These kind of play like a MOBA, actually, if you kind of back the camera out and look at what's going on. You have 2 fortresses, yours and theirs, on 2 opposing sides of the map with all these little stations in between. And you and randomly spawning NPC-controlled characters will keep kind of moving forward to try and take over these little footholds to get your NPCs to spawn closer and closer to the other fortress and eventually take over the other fortress, while the opposing faction is doing the same thing. Now, you could have 5 players running around, 50 players running around. It really doesn't matter, but you've got to have some coordination. And clans, the game's version of guilds, are really going to excel here because there's a reason they want to do it. If clans can take over these areas, the star clan in a particular conflict will be awarded with a clan fortress in that zone for a particular time where they can actually research certain items, and then a clan vendor appears that everybody in the faction can buy things from. So there's incentive for clans to want to band together, take over these conflict zones, do some research, and then sell these different things through clan vendors. So there's actually, it's not I guess not true open world in the sense like you're running around the starter zone and you could get ganked, but it is open world in that it does influence the center line of regions in the map through the actual game world. It's not just the queue up, go to an arena type stuff, which is in the game, but it's a bit of a different take. All in all, only 3-4 days in, I played in a beta test or two. The graphics, sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're downright pretty, and sometimes you see a texture that you're just like, what the hell is that? I do have concerns, reference the video I talked about earlier and linked, but I'm very much enjoying my initial time here. I'm still going through tutorial stuff, though. I literally, 36, 37, just got the tutorial on player housing and how all the crafting works inside there. So there's an awful lot to explore. I don't know if it's compelling enough or interesting enough from a story perspective or what you're going to do every day when you play with your friends. I don't know how long I'll stick around, but it definitely has a little bit of my attention right now, even in the midst of, New World Mania going on. So if you want to check out Elyon, you can do so. It is free to play, launching free to play. They ditched the plans to go buy to play at launch. You'll be able to check it out right now. Just go get it downloaded from the main site. And you can come on over to MMOBomb.com, put your review for the game so that other players can see what you think about Elyon. Until next time, gang, this is Mike Byrne from MMOBomb.com saying, click that subscribe button, come visit the website, stay safe, we'll see you on the servers.